All right, we're taking a trip way back in time to the ancient legendary city of Babylon. It's the setting for one of the most incredible and honestly controversial stories out there. It's a tale about two angels, beings made of pure light, who were sent down to Earth to face the ultimate trial. And that brings us right to the heart of the matter with this one big question. Think about it. Can beings who are supposed to be perfect, who are made of light and exist only to worship, actually be brought down by the very same earthly temptations that we humans struggle with every single day? That question is the engine driving this whole fascinating story. So to really dig into that, we've got to start with the most dramatic, the most well-known version of this story. It's this gripping narrative about temptation, a fall from grace, and a pretty brutal eternal punishment. It's a version that has absolutely captivated people for centuries. Okay, so here's the setup. It's like a cosmic bet. Up in heaven, the angels are kind of looking down at humanity, watching us mess up constantly, and they remark, if we had those desires, we would never ever sin. So God decides to call their bluff. He picks two of the most righteous angels, Harut and Marut, gives them human passions, and sends them to Babylon to prove they can handle it. Well, once they get to Babylon, their big test arrives, and she's in human form. They meet this woman, a dancer named Zohra, who is just unbelievably beautiful. And almost instantly, these angels who were once so pure are just overwhelmed with a desire they have never experienced before. They approach her, but she's not going to make it easy. She gives them a choice. Zohra lays out this ultimatum. She says they can be with her, but only if they commit one of three major sins: worship her idol, kill an innocent person, or drink wine. Now, you can almost see the gears turning in their heads. Harut and Marut try to rationalize it, thinking, okay, drinking wine, that's probably the least terrible option here. But oh boy, were they wrong. The moment they're intoxicated, all their judgment just goes out the window. They end up worshiping the idol, they kill a person who witnesses it, and finally, they commit adultery. That one small sin opened the door to all the rest. And boom, the fallout is immediate, and it is severe. For their total failure, the angels are given a choice: a short-term punishment right here on Earth, or an eternal one in the afterlife. They choose the earthly punishment. So they are hung, upside down, in a well in Babylon, where they are to be tormented until the end of time. And what about Zohra? Well, in all the chaos, she tricks the angels into telling her a divine secret, a word that allows her to ascend to the heavens, where she becomes the planet Venus. What an ending! Now, that is one heck of a story. It's got everything: drama, temptation, cosmic justice. But this is where things take a really interesting turn. We have to stop and ask a critical question about where this incredibly vivid story actually comes from. Because as epic and as powerful as that whole narrative is it the foundational story of Harut and Marut? Or is it something else? Maybe a story that was borrowed from other cultures and just got attached to their names over time. To figure that out, we need to understand this key term that scholars use: Israeliyat. It sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. It basically refers to stories, often from older Jewish and Christian traditions, that made their way into Islamic folklore and commentary. They aren't from the Quran itself or the Prophet Muhammad, but they were so memorable and dramatic that they became super popular. And right there is the crucial point. Many Islamic scholars look at that dramatic fallen angel story we just told and classify it as a classic example of Israeliyat. They see it as a powerful, pre-existing myth that was essentially grafted onto the Quranic figures of Harut and Marut. So to see what's really going on, we have to go to the original source.
So let's switch gears and open up the Quran, because the story you find there is completely different. Harut and Marut are mentioned, for sure, but their mission has nothing to do with being tempted. It's all about teaching and testing.
This one line from the Quran, this is everything. This is the first thing Harut and Marut would say to the people of Babylon before teaching them anything. It's a disclaimer. They're saying, hey, listen up. Our very presence here is a test of your faith. Their goal wasn't to prove their own holiness, it was to test the faith of humanity. See, in the Quran's account, the angels were sent to teach people magic, but with this huge, constant warning. Their purpose was actually pretty complex. They were there to show people the reality and the true danger of sorcery, to clear the name of the prophet Solomon, who people were falsely accusing of being a magician, and to make it crystal clear that anyone who chose this forbidden knowledge over faith would get nothing in the afterlife. There's no Zora, no wine, no murder, just a very serious test of belief. So, if that incredible story of their fall from grace isn't in the Quran, it begs the question, where in the world did it come from? And this is where it gets really fascinating, because we start to uncover this whole web of incredibly similar myths that stretch across all kinds of ancient cultures. Just take a look at this chart. This is where the pattern just jumps right out at you. It's undeniable. In the popular Islamic folklore, you have two angels punished for lust. In the Jewish Midrash, you have two angels, Shemhazai and Azazel, who desire mortal women and get punished by being hung between heaven and earth. Even in ancient Zoroastrianism, you find holy beings who are punished by God. The theme is exactly the same. And let's just zero in on the closest parallel here, because the resemblance is just striking. It's almost the exact same story structure. Two divine beings come to earth, they're tempted by humans, they sin, and they get a very similar eternal punishment. The Jewish tradition even adds that their children were a race of giants, which is a whole other fascinating story found in other ancient texts. And get this theme isn't just in the Abrahamic faiths. This idea of fallen divine beings is a universal archetype. The ancient Jewish text, the Book of Enoch, is probably the most famous for its super detailed account of these angels. But you also find echoes in the Hindu Rig Veda with the story of two Asura brothers, and even in ancient Egyptian mythology. This is clearly a story that resonates deep within the human psyche. Okay, so let's put all of these puzzle pieces together. On one hand, you have the foundational story from the Quran. On the other, you have this incredibly popular ancient myth of fallen angels. How do they connect? And what does this journey of a myth really teach us? Well, the most likely explanation is something we could call narrative fusion. You have the core Quranic story of two angels being sent as a test. This provided the perfect characters, the perfect vessel. And then, over time, storytellers and commentators layered on this much more dramatic, juicy myth of the angels who were tempted and fell from grace, a story that people everywhere already knew and loved. The names were Quranic, but the story that grew around them was part of this ancient, shared human tradition. So what we're left with in the end isn't just one story, but two, each with its own powerful lesson. The original Quranic account is this very stern, theological warning about the dangers of forbidden knowledge and disobeying God. And then you have the folkloric tale, which serves as this timeless allegory for the human condition itself, that constant internal struggle against our own desires. And that really brings it all back to us, doesn't it? Back in Babylon, the test was magic, this forbidden knowledge that promised immense power, but at the cost of your very soul. Today, we're surrounded by our own versions of forbidden knowledge, our own powerful temptations. The story of Harut and Marut, in both its forms, forces us to ask, what's the trial that we're facing today?